Some tears fall in front of other people. Those tears quietly hope for comfort. But there are other tears, the ones that appear only in complete silence, when the door is closed, the lights are low, and no one is there to witness them. Those tears do not ask for sympathy. They ask for truth. Last night, somewhere in a room you will never see, the person you love cried those private tears. Not because the day was too difficult, not because someone was cruel to them. They cried because something buried deep inside finally opened. What came out was not simple sadness, it was recognition. It was the full weight of something they had avoided for far too long, finally rising to the surface and refusing to stay hidden. There is no real awakening without pain. The soul does not change through comfort alone. It changes when the false parts crack, when the mask slips, when reality becomes too clear to ignore. And those tears that come in total solitude are often the purest tears a person can cry, because they belong to no performance, no explanation, no audience. They are raw. They are honest. They are the soundless proof that a heart and mind have finally met themselves. Stay with me because this matters more than it first seems. When those tears finally come, something inside that person has already changed. Quietly, deeply, maybe forever. What you need to understand is this. The person you love did not cry because they were weak. They cried because for one rare moment, they stopped running. For a long time, they had been carrying feelings they could not fully name. They held emotions that never found the right words. They kept telling themselves stories that sounded safe, but never felt true. They wore emotional armor that once protected them, but over time that armor became heavy, cold, and useless. Under all of that, a realization had been growing, slowly, quietly. Ever since your connection began, something in them had been moving, even if they tried not to look at it directly. Last night, that hidden truth became too strong to ignore. Alone, with nowhere left to escape, they let themselves feel the full weight of everything they had kept pushed down. And that is the moment everything started to shift. Not on the outside yet, not in some dramatic movie scene, but inside, where the real turning points happen. Listen carefully because most people miss this part. The deepest emotional moments do not always look powerful from the outside. Sometimes they look like one person sitting in silence, staring at nothing, trying to breathe through a truth that has suddenly become impossible to deny. There is a difficult moment in every inner life when a person finally turns around and faces the parts of themselves they have spent years avoiding. These hidden parts are not always dark in the obvious way. Sometimes they hold the softest pieces of us, the truest desires, the deepest longing, the tenderness we were too afraid to admit. We push them into the shadows not because they are evil, but because they are powerful. We know that if we truly face them, they will change us. And that is what frightens us. Because if we admit what we really feel, then we may have to act differently. We may have to leave old stories behind. We may have to accept that the life we carefully built does not fully match the truth inside our own chest. So people hide. They distract themselves. They explain things away. They keep moving. But hiding has an expiration date. Sooner or later, the truth begins knocking from the inside. For the person you love, that moment finally came. Maybe it was a memory that appeared out of nowhere. Maybe it was a song at the wrong time, or exactly the right time. Maybe it was a thought of you that came with unusual clarity. Or maybe it was nothing obvious at all. Maybe it was simply the collapse of a wall they had been holding up for so long that they forgot how much strength it took to keep it standing. However it happened, the result was the same. They saw themselves more clearly than before. And once that kind of seeing begins, it cannot be undone. The tears that followed were not only about you, they were about everything that came with the truth. The years spent denying what was already quietly known. The conversations that never happened. The moments when courage was needed, but fear made the choice instead. They were grieving lost time, but also grieving the version of themselves they had been pretending to be. Because when a person finally sees what they have been avoiding, they do not only mourn the situation, they mourn the time they spent away from themselves. That is part of awakening too. There is sorrow in becoming honest, because honesty shines light on what was missed. But do not mistake that sorrow for collapse. This is important. The person you love is not falling apart, they are coming together. Those tears were not proof of destruction, they were proof of integration. When the heart and mind finally release emotions that have been locked away for a very long time, it can look like a breakdown from the outside. But inside, something more beautiful is happening. Old patterns begin to loosen. Old defenses start to crack. Old stories lose their control. What looks like breaking is often breaking open, and what opens during one silent night can quietly change the direction of a whole life. That may sound dramatic, but it is true. Some nights divide a life into before and after, even when no one else knows it happened. Pain has a strange purpose. No one wants it. No one asks for it. Yet it strips away pretense in a way comfort rarely does. It pulls off the neat explanations. It exposes the distance between what a person says and what they actually feel. The person you love was stripped of a false story last night, the story that they did not feel this deeply, the story that they had moved on, the story that this connection was small enough to explain with reason, distance, busyness, or distraction. That story did not survive the night, and now they stand in a different relationship with their own truth. You may wonder what truth finally hit them so hard. It is not one simple sentence. It is more like several realizations arriving together, each one strengthening the others. They saw that what they feel is not temporary. They saw that the bond between you was not a fantasy they invented. They saw that silence and distance were not real solutions, only defenses. They saw that the part of them that wakes up around you does not wake up so easily anywhere else. And maybe most painful of all, they saw that pretending otherwise had slowly become a form of self-betrayal. And self-betrayal always has a cost. These truths were not just thoughts passing through the mind. They came like a wave through the body, through the chest, through the breath, through the whole emotional system. Logic could not push them away anymore. That is why the tears came. Not as weakness, as evidence. What makes this moment so meaningful is that it happened in complete solitude. The most important meetings with the self often happen when no one is around, when there is no one to impress, no one to blame, no one to perform for. In solitude, the noise drops. There is no mask to manage, no quick escape into conversation, no easy distraction. The mind has fewer places to hide, and the heart becomes louder. Last night, the person you love stayed with what they felt. Whether they meant to or not, they let the truth sit beside them in that private room. They did not immediately run to someone else. They did not cover the feeling with noise. They did not bury it under 100 small distractions. They allowed the emotion to move through them. They let the tears come. They let the wave pass over them. And in doing that, they took part in one of the bravest acts a person can offer themselves. Honest feeling, full feeling, unhidden feeling. Those tears were not just emotional release. They were proof that something invisible had finally become visible. They marked the end of denial and the beginning of acceptance. And here is what many people never realize. The person who cried in the dark last night is not exactly the same person who woke up this morning. Maybe the outer life looks unchanged. Maybe the messages are still unsent. Maybe the distance still exists. But inside, a rearrangement has already begun. And once the inner world starts changing, the outer life will eventually feel the effect. This is how real transformation often begins. Not with loud announcements, not with dramatic speeches, not with instant action. It begins quietly. A softer thought, a deeper honesty, a small but undeniable change in how someone sees themselves. The outside may look calm, while the inside is being rebuilt. And that is why these solitary tears matter so much. They are not the ending of a story. They are the opening scene of a new one. They mark the point where a person finally chooses truth over illusion, even if that truth arrives wrapped in grief. Maybe they still do not know what happens next. Maybe they are still trying to make sense of what they felt during those late hours, but they cannot unknow what they now know. They cannot fully return to the old explanations that once helped them feel safe. They crossed something invisible, a line, a threshold. And even if they hesitate now, even if fear still shows up, the most important step has already happened. They stopped hiding from themselves, and that changes everything. Stay with me because this next part matters. Awakening is usually not loud. It is often private, almost ordinary on the surface. One night of honest tears can do what years of distraction never managed to do. It can wash away layers of resistance. It can clear the noise. It can allow the heart to speak in its own language after being silenced for far too long. That is not small. That is life-changing. The person you love may still be confused. They may still feel fear, doubt, or uncertainty. They may still want to protect themselves. But something important has already started. They came face to face with a living truth inside them, and that truth will now keep shaping their choices, whether they fully understand it yet or not. The tears they shed were not the end of their strength. They were the beginning of a deeper kind of strength, the kind that appears when someone stops fighting what is real. That is why last night was more than an emotional release. It was a turning point. Everything hidden inside the unconscious longs to be expressed. The inner life naturally wants to grow beyond confusion and division, so it can become more whole. The person you love has now entered the early stage of that movement. Feelings that had been pressing against the walls of awareness finally found a way through. And once those feelings are expressed, they do not simply go back to where they were before. The psyche does not walk backward so easily after a truth has revealed itself. It begins to grow around that truth. It starts learning from it. It allows that truth to shape the next chapter. You may be asking yourself what they will do now. Will they speak? Will they reach out? Will they finally close the distance? Those questions are natural, but they are not the deepest ones. The deeper question is not what they will do next. It is who they are becoming now. Because actions follow identity, and lasting outer change always begins with inner change. Something in the foundation of their inner world shifted. Quietly, yes, but truly. That shift will reveal itself sooner or later in the outer world. The timing may not match your hope. The path may not be direct. It may even surprise you. But the foundation matters, because the foundation shapes everything built after it. There is a special kind of courage in what happened last night, even though no one clapped for it and no one saw it. It is the courage to feel without escaping, the courage to stay present with the truth instead of running into distraction, the courage to let the tears fall rather than forcing them back into silence. This kind of inner honesty becomes the base of real transformation. A person who can stay with their own truth in solitude has crossed a line many people avoid their whole lives. And after that line is crossed, life begins to change in subtle but real ways. Relationships become more honest. Choices become more aligned with the heart. The background noise of self-deception slowly grows quieter. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because the war between denial and truth begins to calm down. Still, this process is rarely neat. That is another thing you should know. The person you love may move through waves in the coming days. One hour they may feel clear, the next afraid. One moment open, the next pulled back behind old defenses. That does not mean the breakthrough was false. It means it was real. Real change moves in waves, layer by layer, truth by truth.
Defenses built over many years do not vanish in one night. They fall slowly, one piece at a time, and each piece that falls reveals more of what was always underneath. Last night was likely the first major crack. There may be more to come. And each one may bring the person you love closer to the version of themselves they were meant to become. Deep inside every human being, there is a quiet movement toward wholeness. No matter how long someone ignores their truth, something within keeps calling them back. That inner call does not disappear because it is neglected. It does not fade because it is resisted. It waits. It gathers force. It builds silently until one day, often without warning, it rises and demands to be heard. That is what happened. The person you love met that moment. The wholeness they had been avoiding finally caught up with them. And once that deeper truth reveals itself, it becomes very hard to return comfortably to a fragmented life. They may try. They may fall back into habits. They may resist what they discovered. But something essential has already changed, and that change keeps working beneath the surface even when the conscious mind wants to turn away. You may have felt some of this from your side too. Sometimes when a bond carries deep emotional weight, one person's inner shift can stir reflection in the other. Maybe you woke with a strange heaviness or a sudden lightness. Maybe you thought of them more than usual. Maybe something in you sensed that the atmosphere had changed. Sometimes the heart notices movement before the mind understands it.
And if that has been your experience, do not rush to force meaning onto it. Just notice it. Let it invite you into deeper awareness of your own inner world. Because this moment is not only asking something of them, it is asking something of you as well. The person you love has just gone through something deeply personal and brave. What they need now is not pressure, not demands, not emotional chasing. They do not need to be cornered into action before they have fully understood what has opened inside them. They need room. They need time. They need space to absorb what they have discovered. Real integration takes patience. The inner life needs time to reorganize after a truth breaks through. So if you want to meet this moment wisely, remain steady. Stay grounded in your own truth. Do not rush to control the outcome. Do not try to pull clarity from them before clarity has fully formed. The greatest gift you can offer right now is your stability. Not constant pursuit, not total disappearance. Stability. Be the calm presence that does not panic, the quiet strength that does not demand, the grounded energy that does not need to chase, convince, or force. Powerful emotions need careful holding. Last night, something they had kept contained for a long time finally overflowed. In the days ahead, they may begin searching for a new way to carry what they now know. That work belongs to them. You cannot do it for them. But you can meet the moment with patience, emotional depth, safety, and self-respect. Sometimes, that is more powerful than words. There is also something graceful in how this happened. They did not plan to cry. They did not schedule a revelation. They did not sit down intending for their inner world to crack open. It came unexpectedly, almost like a quiet visitation, as if something deeper than the ordinary mind moved through them and said, "Enough hiding, enough pretending, enough distance from the truth." That deeper center of the self is always trying to guide a person toward greater wholeness, even when the ego is afraid. Last night, that guidance broke through, and now the person you love stands at the edge of a new chapter, whether they are ready for it or not. The question is no longer whether they feel it. They do. The question is how they will live with what they now know. That answer may take time. It may come slowly. It may unfold in ways you cannot predict. But the turning point has already happened. The hidden has begun to speak. The tears proved it. So if you needed a sign that something deep has shifted inside them, this is that sign. Not a loud one, not a public one, a quiet one, a sacred one. the kind that happens behind closed doors and changes a person from the inside out. And if you understand the meaning of that, then you understand why last night was not a simple moment of sadness. It was the beginning of truth, the beginning of honesty, the beginning of a more whole self trying, at last, to come into the light. And here is the part most people do not understand until much later. Once a person has cried because of truth, not just pain, they cannot fully return to the person they were before that night. They can delay, they can hesitate, they can pretend for a little longer, but something inside them has already moved. A deeper awareness has entered the room, and once that happens, even silence feels different. Even ordinary moments begin to carry a strange weight. A simple song can hit harder. A memory can stay longer. A quiet evening can suddenly feel full of meaning. That is because truth changes the atmosphere inside a person before it changes anything outside. And when that atmosphere changes, life begins to feel different, even if nothing has happened yet. This is why nights like that matter. They do not always produce instant action. They do not always lead to a message, a confession, or a dramatic return. But they do something even more important first.
They make pretending more difficult. They make inner division harder to maintain. They make the old excuses sound empty. And once excuses lose their power, a person slowly starts becoming more honest with themselves, then with life, then with the people who matter most. If you are still here, listen closely, because this next truth may change how you see the whole situation. The tears were not asking for rescue. They were creating clarity.
Clarity is not always gentle. Sometimes it arrives like a mirror someone never wanted to stand in front of. It reflects everything at once. The longing, the fear, the missed chances, the silence. The reasons that once felt convincing but now sound thin and tired. The person you love may have spent a very long time trying to make peace with a version of life that never fully satisfied the deepest part of them. That happens more often than people admit. Human beings become skilled at surviving in emotional half-light. They learn how to function while ignoring what aches beneath the surface. They smile, they work, they answer messages, they carry on. But deep down, something remains unsettled. And every so often, in one unguarded hour, that buried unrest rises and asks to be felt. Last night they felt it, not a little, fully. And that changes the inner map. Because once a person stops lying to themselves about what they feel, the whole structure of their inner world begins to rearrange. Some things no longer fit, some old habits start feeling strange, some distractions lose their effect, some forms of distance begin to feel heavier than before. They may not know exactly what to do with all of this yet. That is normal. Truth often comes before readiness. Awareness often arrives before courage. But even then, the movement has started. Quietly. Irreversibly. And that is why this moment matters more than any outward sign you may be waiting for. There is also another layer to this, and it is a painful one. Sometimes the tears are not only for what is felt now. Sometimes they are for all the moments when the truth tried to rise earlier and was pushed back down. Think about that. How many times did they almost admit it to themselves, then change the subject in their own mind? How many nights did they feel something close to this, then bury it under fatigue, logic, pride, or fear? How many times did they sense that the connection mattered more than they were allowing themselves to admit? These things leave traces. Every avoided truth leaves a weight behind. Every silenced feeling asks for its turn eventually. So when the tears finally come, they often carry more than one moment. They carry months, sometimes years. They carry all the unsaid words, all the delayed realizations, all the emotions that were never given a proper place to land. That is why the crying can feel so deep, so overwhelming, so strangely clean at the same time. It is not only release, it is reckoning. It is the soul catching up with itself. And when that happens, Even the person going through it may not fully understand why it feels so powerful. They just know that something real is happening, something larger than the usual mood, something that cannot be solved by sleep alone. And maybe that is exactly what makes it sacred, not because it is dramatic, but because it is honest. In a world full of performance, honesty this raw is rare.
So what happens after a night like that?
Usually not what people expect, not instant certainty, not perfect confidence, not a straight line from realization to action. More often, what follows is a quieter process. Reflection, emotional waves, strange moments of calm followed by sudden heaviness, a growing awareness that something has changed, paired with a very human fear of what that change may ask from them. They may wake up and try to return to routine, but routine will not feel exactly the same. They may tell themselves to stay practical, but practicality will not fully silence the heart now. They may even try to dismiss what happened, yet some part of them will know better. This is why real inner change is so powerful. It does not need to shout, it simply stays. It remains in the body, in the thoughts, in the pauses between tasks, in the feeling that something unresolved is now asking to be lived more truthfully. And yes, they may resist it. People often do.
Not because the truth is wrong, but because truth can be expensive.
It may ask for vulnerability. It may ask for honesty. It may ask for a different future than the one they had planned. That is why some people stand at the edge of transformation for a while before stepping fully into it. But standing at the edge is not nothing. It means they have arrived at the place where change becomes possible, and that is where the person you love is now, on that edge, between the life they can no longer fully believe in and the truth they are only beginning to accept. This is also why patience matters so much, not passive waiting, not silent suffering, real patience, the kind that stays rooted without forcing a result. Because when someone has just touched a truth this deep, they need room to hear their own inner voice clearly.